This is the Plain English Real Estate Show with your host, Rowena Patton, a show that focuses on the real estate market in terms you can easily understand. Call Rowena now. The number is 240-9962 or 1-800-570-9962. Now here's the English girl in the mountains, the agent that I would trust, Rowena Patton.
Good morning and welcome to the show. This is going to be a good one. We're talking about home owner associations, HOAs. And we have Charlie Meek in the studio. Good morning, Charlie. How are you?
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
Of course, I'm delighted to. Are you going to be talking as well? Should we introduce you?
My name is Tad Ogren. I'm Charlie's assistant manager.
Cool. There's no just assistant manager when you're in HOA. I know that. You do a lot. Oh, my gosh.
That's flattering. Thank you.
Well, I know you do.
He's a heavy lifter. Don't let him tell you otherwise.
And we all know some people love HOAs. Some people are not so nice about HOAs. About, I'd say, 50-60% of the people who are searching on our site at mountainhomehunt.com are coming in and they are asking for no HOA. And we're going to get a little bit into that as well and the best management of HOAs. And we're going to hear from Charlie and Todd about their experiences with HOAs. I was president of an HOA for 5 years, at least one. And I can give you my personal experiences from both sides. I've lived inside HOAs, outside HOAs. I live in an HOA right now where the gate is broken again. I think half the neighborhood wants the gate and the other half is like, yay, the gate's open. We don't have to mess with these little gate openers that we've been given, the new ones, because sometimes we put a cheaper system in or one that's not so good. And it's very hard to get parts these days, apparently, so it can take forever, and then everyone's arguing about the gate. So I'm sure gate's one of those things we can be talking about, gentlemen. Am I right?
Oh, absolutely. That's a reoccurring theme.
Dog poop. Oh, there's a classic. We've got all kinds of arguments going on about dog poop. People don't pick it up. Then we have dog poop stations, and then who's going to manage the dog poop stations, and all those interesting conversations that we all volunteer to be on a board to discuss. And you gentlemen are obviously therapists and guide us through it. Am I right?
That seems to be part of the role sometimes.
Yes, I'm sure. I'm Rowena Patton. This is the Real Estate News Radio Show. You can call in with your HOA stories. We'd love to hear them, or property management stories for that matter. 828-240-9962. If you are listening somewhere in Mars, 1-800-IF. What about if? I mean, come on, we know the Martians are listening. What's wrong with me this morning? 1-800-570-9962 if you are calling from Mars. And of course, you could be tuned in at WWNC 570 AM, or you're listening on the link to listen anywhere in the world. So if you've got somebody in Florida, a friend in Florida who's in an HOA and has a funny HOA story, we would love to hear it today. Good, bad, indifferent, all your HOA stories, we want to hear them. 828-240-9962. I will repeat that for you, of course, as we go throughout the show. My name's Rowena Patton, All-Star Powerhouse, brokered by EXP. We are a boutique real estate agency that are 3,000 plus transactions in at this point. I will not say we've seen it all, because you've never seen it all. Strange things happen all the time that you would never experience in real estate. Or you wouldn't think you would experience in real estate, or with that much experience, you'd think there's nothing new. There's something new all the time. It's part of the fun and the stress of real estate, which is probably why 83% of real estate agents have gone by year 3. That's a scary statistic, isn't it?
Wow.
Well,
So All-Star Powerhouse has always been about training. We are hiring. We do a lot of training. We have a best-selling book on selling homes. Why? Because those are all training programs. They came from where I used to teach around the country, and the training programs are there to make it easier to sell a home, to make it easier to buy a home. We can't make it easy. Well, actually, sometimes we can make it easy. There's nothing easy about buying and selling. It's stressful. You're leaving your house behind. You're packing up all your stuff. You're going through moving. You're wrapping everything up. But we can take a lot of the stress out of it. Especially go look up cpoexperts.com, something we run around the country. I know our property managers here would love it if every property they ever had went through this process. So that is like a CPO car. That's where you get it appraised, inspected. You don't need to do all of this if you work with us. We just suggest it, and it makes transactions go a whole lot smoother. What the average person won't tell you is that over a third of contracts, of real estate sales contracts, drop out. Not something we like to talk about. Ours is 7% instead of 33%. So you choose which process you want to use. It takes the stress out. Everybody's going in eyes wide open. You don't have to fix anything at all. We just notate it on the inspection report. When we've got serious interest or an offer, we share the inspection report. We don't get you into contract. Why is that important? Everybody wants to be in a contract. Because we don't want to get you in 33% of the contracts that fall out 6 weeks later or 4 weeks later when the inspection's done or the appraisal is done. All of that is taken off the bat. We can't stop every dropout because sometimes buyers buy a new car or do something silly that hurts their credit or, right before they're going to buy a house. It does happen. However, it greatly increases it. So CPOexperts.com, we've got 300 zips around the country now using this process. It's something that I train agents to do around the country. So on to property management. What I'd love to talk to you about, Charlie, let's start with the things that are complaints at the HOA meetings. So what are people complaining about? So I know we've got dog poo. That was a very common one at the neighborhood that I was in. And we've got gates. We already talked about gates. What else?
Communication seems to be an ongoing issue. I mean, in this day and age, when we have so much of it, we have so many options to do it, that's just an age-old problem that we just still haven't seemed to have gotten across yet.
Okay, so things like not everybody has email or they don't like texting, or what do you mean?
Well, we're talking about such exciting stuff here that everybody wants to break their neck to open their email from their homeowners association. So, making that communication more effective, more interesting. Sometimes that's a challenge, but finding a way to reach out and actually, talk with your folks, let them understand that you care about what's going on with the community and the members.
Yes, absolutely. I've represented a number of different neighborhoods as a real estate agent. I was president as a homeowner that lived in a neighborhood. But as a real estate agent, I've represented, at least a dozen neighborhoods in my time. And one was Brickton Village, which is a great condo development that was put together by a friend of mine who is very experienced in affordable homes. He's just a great, he just happens to be English too, but great guy, Rod Hubbard. Here, Rod, I'll give you a shout out. And I created a Facebook group for that is still going, and they still think, this is, 8 years later or something, they still think I'm, running everything on the HOA. It's kind of interesting. Communication's a massive one these days, where is it Facebook message? Is it text? Is it email? What else have we got? We've got WhatsApp, we've got GroupMe, we've got Zoom. All of us have you two are too young to remember when we didn't have all of this, I'm sure. All right, maybe not Charlie. I'm just kidding you. I'm just kidding you, Charlie. Well, we only had Facebook in the 2000s. It's not that long ago.
No,
it's probably 2005 or 7 or something. I don't know.
Yeah, and there's
not
almost too much now, like you were saying. You just listed like 50 of them, and the question is, all right, how do we be effective without wearing everybody out?
Yes.
And I think we get overload sometimes, too.
Yes. I think, possibly when you're retired as well, some people would say, oh, well, you're retired, so you've got time to look in these 16 different places. And well, I don't like to text. I'm so sick of my phone. You've heard this, haven't you?
Oh, yeah.
I have a flip phone. I have a flip phone on purpose because I don't want to text. So it's like, well, we have email. Well, I prefer not to have it, especially some people who are very private. So, I think it's a much bigger question probably of how on earth do we deal with communication these days? Because it's exhausting.
Yeah, because I'm trying to avoid the dog poop at the same time and pick up all these texts. How am I going to do that?
Exactly right. So with homeowners in a development, small, medium, large, do you have open meetings to the development, or do you just meet with the board, or is it all done by Zoom these days? How does that happen, Charlie?
Well, we highly encourage all of our boards to have as many open meetings as possible because, again, that transparency, that communication, that trust is, that's all tantamount to having a good relationship with your members and a successful community. So that doesn't always occur, but, most of the time it does. And most of the time the boards are very receptive to trying to keep building that bridge with their members because, You got leadership and you got everyone else. And that's the way people look at it. And that's really not how it should go.
Very, very true. It's people self-serving their own interests. Gosh, we have a lot of politics going on around that right now too. Can we get into that, Randy?
You woke me up. What?
Yeah, really. We're also tired about hearing about the politics and everything's going on right now with self-serving interests, right? So we'd love to hear your HOA stories this morning. 828-240-9962. Martians that are listening in, 1-800-570-9962. If you know somebody with an HOA story, we would love to hear it because they're always the fun ones. We're doing the good, bad, and the ugly today. Some people love HOAs. Some people don't like to be in HOAs. We've got Charlie and Todd on, who are a property management company that work with HOAs of developments as well as condo associations. So let me throw this one out to you from the board. It was always... So I was on a board with a lot of older people actually in their 70s. Because usually those are the people with the time. I don't know what I was thinking, honestly, because we had weekly meetings because we had all kinds of stuff going on. And I was extremely busy at the time. And because I'm not extremely busy now, I was on the phone at 7 o'clock this morning.
Unbusy all
yeah,
of a sudden.
we have $2 million+ offers going on. And I was on the phone at 7 o'clock this morning. So, yeah, I'm not busy these days at all. But I don't know what I was thinking then, but I wanted to do something to help. And the number one job of an HOA board is to protect current values of home and future values. So, of course, it's everybody's ethics, right? But we literally had a board member who said, I'm 70 years old. I'm not going to be around when, I'll either have moved or I'll be in the earth when these changes come to pass. And we're talking about things like, turning the roads over to the city so that they would be maintained. We're talking about a small townhome development in the same community that had roofs that the documents weren't set up properly, so all the roofs were separate. Well, it's the row houses, basically. It's all one big roof. You can't replace part of it. In fact, I've seen that done and it ain't pretty. So that's one thing to look out for if you live in a townhome. There aren't many of them, but I have seen townhomes here where on the residential property disclosure it says when was the roof replaced, and you can see the roofs and they look different. It's been patched in over the row, if you see what I mean. So the obvious thing to do, correct me if I'm wrong here, gentlemen, roofs are expensive and roads are really expensive and pools are expensive. Not everywhere has a pool. Almost everywhere has roofs and roads. The correct thing to do is build a reserve. But that means, I feel like we're talking about Social Security right now. That means current owners have to pay for future endeavors. Where's the incentive to do that? How do you explain that to a board? Especially a board, you have a lot of these boards have self-interest. Gosh, now I feel like I'm talking about Trump getting arrested on Tuesday. It was the big breaking news.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, he's going to get arrested on Tuesday. So, how do you present this to a homeowners association where you move in and you feel like the documents maybe haven't been drawn up properly?
Well, obviously the whole process you just described in a way requires some sense of altruism, and we all know about that. So at the end of the day...
what do we know about that?
Well, that we're going to do the right thing for every future generations, and we should do that because it is the right thing. Well, unfortunately, it doesn't gain a whole lot of traction. Mm-hmm. So you got to turn around and look at, okay, what's the immediate benefit to you as a homeowner to expend dollars that you will probably never see the benefit of? Well, I have noticed a trend, and more savvy buyers nowadays are looking for those reserve funds.
Yeah.
So that seems to be the track that, unfortunately, maybe not as community oriented, but when we get down to the brass tacks in their pockets, it's like, hey, you may not be able to sell this property if you have a savvy buyer. I had a CPA, and they told me that after the fact, and we're disclosing the property, we're giving them the reserve fund, and actually we're really well funded. And he's like, hey, you know what? This is one of the few that I've seen that really has a solid reserve study. It's well funded. It's not anticipating, special assessments, which we all know is a dirty word. So, and that's
let's
so
explain
rare.
what they are, because not everybody knows what they are. But
Sure.
What's a special assessment? We deal with that in residential sales all the time.
So when a community doesn't plan well, that's where you come in and say, you know what, we made our best judgment, but we didn't anticipate all the needs, so now we need to give us more money. And what folks don't realize is, depending on your association documents, that special assessment, it may take a majority of all the members. It may just be the board. So that's another good reason to make sure you understand your association documents, and especially before you buy a home. But when you get there, that board may have control over that, and you may be getting an invoice, sometime down the road, 30, 60 days, saying, hey, we did our best, but sorry, here's another 10 grand we need.
Yikes. That's kind of scary.
Super scary.
And you've signed up for paying that, so there's no way out. And the problem is in every neighborhood. So I'll give the example of Brickton, for example. So this is a large condo development. And in the beginning, because it was affordable housing, there are all kinds of stipulations that go along with that. So, you get breaks on things, but at the same time, you don't want investors in there because it's affordable. Therefore, a lot of investors would buy them. So in the early days, if I should know this, but like low hundreds, even in the 90s, you could buy one of those, 90,000s, you could buy one of those condos. Now they're 200, 300, even more. So it obviously would have been an amazing investment and has been for the people who bought in there. Just like most new condo buildings or most new homes are a good investment because they're younger, basically. It's exactly what we're talking about with reserves. So, there were special stipulations on there that we didn't want investors in. Therefore, there wasn't even a cap on how many people could rent. So that's what you see commonly in a neighborhood. You see 15, 20% cap on rentals that are permitted. Well, the problem is life happens. So in 2008, a lot of those people who were getting into affordable housing spent every penny getting into their condos. And just like every other development or real estate in general, we had a bunch of foreclosures, which hits the values. But we had this stipulation on there that we couldn't rent. So all that was changed after a while to push it up to that 15%. Now, why is that important? Because somebody that's underwater on their mortgage, what do we mean by that? On the way out, it's called a short sale. So if you bought a Brickton condo at 150 and now the price has dropped in 2008 and you're at 130 and you have to sell, maybe you get divorced, maybe your parents are sick in Arizona, all the things that happen that have you moving, then you couldn't rent it out until the market recovers. It's not that necessarily you wanted to be a landlord, but you didn't have the $15,000-$20,000 you're going to come up with to not be in default on your mortgage, or you did a short sale which hurts your credit. And of course, we had so many people that happening to between 2008 and about 2012. It always happens, guys. It's like unemployment. There's always a number there. It always happens. It's like taxes. You always pay something, right? So there's always the baseline. But that increased dramatically because of stipulations that are made on HOA documents. Now, reserves is a really interesting one to me because maybe I like spreadsheets or something. I don't know. But, of course, we got some advice. And doing reserves on a roof is not complicated. There's nothing complex there. If you've got if you've got a 30-year, okay, so it's 30-year shingles. What does that mean? I mean, I would push it out to fit because I'm fiscally conservative. I would say, okay, this roof that has cost us on 10 townhomes, I mean, what are we talking about? $50,000, $100,000, whatever it is.
Changes every day.
Let's say it's $80,000, right? So we've got $80,000 on our roofs on, let's make it 100. I want to make easy math this morning. $100,000, and it's a 30-year roof. Well, I want reserves in there for 15 years, don't you guys? We're in the mountains. Am I right?
Yep.
It doesn't mean to say anything's going to happen, but you want to build those reserves within 15 years and then keep them there. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, like you just said, we're in the mountains. The conditions are different. I mean, you got to plan for those things.
So let's say, I had to do some. Let's say $150,000 we want in reserves for the roofs, and we've got 15 years to do it. So we want $10,000 a year.
I mean, honestly, as fast as you can get there, because the other thing you got to consider too, you got inflation, you got material costs, you got all these other things happening there. The faster you get to that point, then you have some flexibility, and then you're back in that special assessment territory that everybody hates if you miss the mark.
Of course. So I think we went a little over on how much the roof costs there, but we're just checking. So let's say it's somewhere between $5,000 and $10,000 a year, right? And we've got 10 people, so that's $500 towards the roof. Mm-hmm. Is that right? Mm-hmm. A year? And that's just the roof, right? That's a lot of money. Now, you could say, okay, we're going to play it out over the full time, so it's going to be $250 per year for the roof. But that's not hard math, is all I'm saying. No. You're not going to cover everything. And it depends whether the exterior, usually the exterior on townhomes may or may not be taken care of. What are you seeing in that? And if you're buying, I want you to hear all of this, because these are great things that a buyer agent will check out for you. Of course, you can give us a call, All Star Powerhouse, brokered by EXP, 828-333-4483. We pick up the phone 24/7. Yes, really. It's not always us. You get an answering machine after 8 o'clock at night. However, we pick up the phone 24/7. I ain't picking it up right now because I'm doing a live radio show, but we're all good. We've got people picking up the phone for you. You want a great buyer's agent to discover all of these things. How often are you seeing the outside yard maintenance included in the fees?
I'm seeing it more and more, actually. And quite frankly, I think it's a good thing, because expecting that someone's going to mow their yard on a regular basis when you've got lots of folks there is a bit of a pipe dream.
So I'll give a shout out to Park Avenue here. So I just bought a home in Park Avenue in Arden, and it's a relatively inexpensive, $70 a month. That covers you for the pool and the tennis/pickle courts, and I think that's pretty reasonable, actually. It's a single family home. However, you can add $40 a month to have your lawn mowed. I thought that was genius. It's actually the first time I've seen it in a homeowners association like that. It makes so much sense, because people, of course, everybody wants independence. I get that. I totally get it. And at the same time, if you've got one guy who mows lawns and he can go house to house, you're going to get a better fee. I mean, $40 to mow your lawn, right? That's pretty good.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Right? So, and it's the same guy. So obviously you'll get a better fee because he's got his crew out. He can go lawn to lawn to lawn. You don't have to use their lawn service, because people on the board went, blah, blah, blah. Oh, I don't want to do that. I want mine to put. Great, okay. But at least half the people can lump into the $40 a week guy and not have to deal with it. You just pay it on your HOA, which I thought was genius.
No, I agree. Then you got consistency, too, which is really one of the main tenets of homeowners associations.
Yeah, and you don't have scruffy lawns in one place. Yeah. It's like, oh, well, I don't believe in cutting the lawn. The rabbits want to eat it. Good morning, Patrick. How are you doing this morning?
Good morning, Rowena, and welcome to you. I hear you're talking about HOAs, and it just triggered something in me. I had to call in and talk about this last condo in Hendersonville that I went to, and I was impressed. I was so impressed with the way they were very, very organized in their HOA. Mm-hmm. And, so I felt great when I went back to my client and talked to her about the fact that they had a couple $100,000 reserve. They had a couple of those in CDs gaining money.
Ooh.
They hadn't done a special assessment in 10 years because they had planned right.
And then once it's in place and people are paying money in on a monthly basis and people buy, I think that's the thing. Your client is going in. How much were the HOA fees? Do you remember?
Well, they were $250, which sounds like a lot, and somebody on a fixed budget, it can be a lot.
Yeah.
But it covered everything on the outside. It didn't cover the HVAC. It didn't cover the windows. It didn't cover the front door. But it covered everything else outside, and then you took care of everything on the inside.
So you don't have to think about anything. So I think the thing that's missed often, if we can talk about condos for a minute, is the fact that fee covers your insurance. Right? People don't think about that.
This place was and half of it was in a floodplain, which they had never experienced anything, and it was a 500-year flood. But, you still have to have the insurance, which is, can be expensive.
Well, unless they invent something quite remarkable, most of us probably won't be around in 500 years, would be my guess. Most of us weren't in this country 500 years ago, in fact. How do they know?
Well, I love you guys talking about
How
this.
do they know?
Yeah.
Who were these people
They
that
don't.
experienced the flood 500 years ago?
No.
I think that I'm not even going to say it. Well, yeah, it's good to hear that, Patrick. And most often, I think, and Todd can answer this as well, or Charlie can answer this as well, that HOAs in condo developments tend to be more organised because you have to be. You're a group of people together with a common use on the outside. What would you say to that, Charlie?
Yeah, I mean, you got your standard homes. Everybody does their own thing, but you're tied into one building or several buildings, but you're all tied together. It's one big happy family, whether you like it or not.
Yeah, let's hope they put some soundproofing in the floors, right?
Exactly.
Oh, my gosh. When I first moved from the UK in 1996, I moved to DC, lived in an apartment building. LA, moved in apartments because we were there for a short period of time for my husband's work, down to Miami Beach. Then I was actually developing a couple of homes. So the common thing there was to take an old house and turn it into condos because this is on South Beach, so everything was so expensive, and there were a lot of very old homes with basically 4 apartments in them. Sometimes there were quadplexes with 4 units. Sometimes there were a house that people had just taken the rooms and converted into apartments. Very, very common. And then you don't have soundproofing. You don't have really that well of an organised HOA. Charlie was mentioning here that he's seen HOAs that, especially small HOAs or small buildings or small developments that are just, trying to get out of the mire of 2008, 2009, 2010. Perhaps the development went bust. Many of them did. People didn't want to pay the dues on their lots, so they just let them go and just, maybe they were bought out by another developer. Trying to get through that time, went to attorneys that were maybe straight out of attorney school to put these documents together. And we've seen things like townhomes in a row where you're responsible for your roof instead of everybody in your row being responsible. And you can't just put a new roof on the little patch in between, like things like that. Would you say that that's true, Charlie, where some corners are cut sometimes and that somebody like Patrick Franzen, who's a great buyer's agent, can look into that and get some more information?
Well, yeah, like you said, there's kind of a mad dash for a solution. And I want to make sure that, condos and HOAs, associations, they're great when they're done properly. And I think that's the issue, is that takes planning, that takes, be able to look at it at 10,000 feet. And unfortunately, when these banks, started grabbing them, like, we got to move this property, somebody else has got to get in here, we need a new developer. And you got these places that have been half developed, it's half turned over. You got a board sitting there saying, what the heck do we do? They're trying to get the best route they can. And unfortunately, it's almost like, they got to grab the first thing there. And sometimes that's maybe not the most qualified attorney in that case. So, they're doing the best they can with what they got. But, yeah, it was a bit of a mad dash to put things back together. And we're still working through some of those problems today.
Well, let's explain that just a little bit more. So we're in the business, so we, understand all those terms. In 2007, we crested. We did the normal economic cycle, 7 to 11 years. Anybody know who set that up in 1860?
Comment, Google her.
Good job. Good old Clement Jouglas set it up back in 1860. Patrick's so smart, see, he knows all of this stuff. And nothing has changed since 1860, 7 to 11 years. Guess what? We crested at Christmas. I firmly believe this. We're seeing some price drops. We're seeing some bump ups too, here and there. It's a very weird time right now, but look at what happens in the stock market. It goes down, it goes up, it goes down, it goes up. But the trend is downwards, and we'll see that for the next 3.5 to 5.5 years. And then in 7 to 11 years, we will see prices higher than what they're at now. It's just what happens. Houses gain 2 to 3% a year, and they don't do that on the way down. They lose 2 to 3% a year, and then they gain a little bit more on the way up. It's that straightforward. So 2007, we had the normal cresting, the normal economic cycle, a little bit harsher because of the banking crash, as we know. We went on that way down in 2009, 2010, 2005, 2006. The market was crazy. So all these builders got out there. These investors came in from Florida, from New York, from Texas, from all over the place, and built these developments. So they bought big tracts of land. Sometimes they spent $200,000-$300,000, millions of dollars. The Cliffs was one of those in Swannanoa, for example. Millions of dollars clearing an entire mountain, People paid $200,000 to $500,000 for those cliff lots, and then it went belly up. So, then what happens is, as Charlie was saying, the banks come in and they're like, we've got to get, these people owed us millions of dollars. They'd put it in, and now they've gone bust, so we've got to get our money back. So then it's a scramble. Very often, Charlie, did you find this? There are banks in Charlotte or banks somewhere else. Fort Lauderdale, they're not here, so they don't necessarily understand the market too.
Yeah, and unfortunately, that happens with a lot of things. I mean, they're just trying to get it done.
Yeah.
And we've got this beautiful mountain area that it's kind of unique in itself. So you got to have a little bit of an understanding, a little bit of know-how with how to navigate these mountain properties, and that doesn't always happen.
Right, so you really want that strength in an HOA. So for Patrick, as somebody who he's listing homes, he's working with a lot of buyers coming in from other places. So Patrick, how many of your buyers that you're talking to on a daily basis? We get so many people at mountainhomehunt.com signing in, looking at their home values. They're looking to buy a home. We're getting 5-10 new people coming in a day. How many people are you talking to who are not local, Patrick?
No, gosh. It's probably 90% row.
That high.
And, and these folks are looking, but one of the frustrations right now is our inventory. We, in Buncombe County, for example, last February, 2022, there were 322 listings that came on the market. And this year, there were 241 in the month of February. Mm-hmm. And so the market's down 25% as far as new listings.
Well, it was dire last year too. That's the thing. Yeah. We didn't have any last year either. So that's not a small drop. That's a major drop. So why are people waiting to list their homes, Patrick?
Gosh, I don't know. I think it might be a little bit of a combination of they've got a great interest rate. If they were to move somewhere, the interest rate, if they got the same home, they would pay all of their profits probably into the difference, and then they've got a higher interest rate. So maybe we won't take that job transfer or even an upgraded job because the money gets swallowed by what happens to be a higher house payment.
It's so interesting though. So I think one thing, you're right, it's just the trend of everybody waits until there's leaves on the trees and flowers out and the house looks so much prettier. The problem is everyone thinks that way, so you'll have so much more competition. And let's attack interest rates. Guys, I just bought a house. I'm walking the talk here. We're not just telling you, it's a great time to buy a house. Any time's a great time to sell. Any time's a great time to buy when you get the strategy right. So here's the thing, guys. You got a great interest rate? Awesome. Have the seller buy down your interest rate. It doesn't cost that much. It sounds like a massive amount, but if you've got many of you are sitting on these homes where you've got hundreds of thousands of dollars in equity, and you're sitting in this big dusty home full of your partner calls it all your crap, right? One of you's a hoarder and you've got stuff all over the house. One of you's going, I can't be bothered to move. And you're sitting in this place you can't heat, you can't cool, you got stairs, your knees are hurting. You just want a nice little new place in that lovely Florida place you keep seeing advertised on the TV. You want to go down for those $400,000 homes. That's one of the rooms, right? With a great pool and everything to be around your friends. But you're sitting in this big dusty house because your interest rate's only 4%. Well, you can unlock that equity by having the seller buy down. And oh my gosh, guys, if you're in a $500,000 house, pay $15,000 to bring that interest rate down. They're probably not going to offer you list price anyway in this market. That's a way for you to get out. Just buy their interest rate down and have where you're going do the same thing. That's it. It's not that hard.
A lot of builders are definitely offering buy down.
Yeah.
Right now, I'm seeing that across the board almost.
It's very simple. When you get a mortgage, there's a thing called points. I mean, let's not make it too complicated because it's not. It's just a way where you can put more money in to buy down your interest rate as a buyer. Now, the seller can do that on your behalf. They can only do up to a certain percentage, depending on the loan and blah, 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 which company you're using and everything else. If you need financing and you want to discuss that buy down and what it looks like, camera and ball, you can go to mountainhomehunt.com. Go to financing. It's right there. His cell phone's on there. His pretty face is on there. He will tell you all about how that works, but it's very, very straightforward, and it is worth it. So there's that objection gone. I think mainly it's all the stuff and things, Patrick, that you have stuck in your house, and it makes it seem very hard to move. But guess what? You guys who are up there in years, do you really want to leave that for your kids to go through? I've been through it. It's not fun. It is not fun.
I've also been through it, and God bless my mother. She did a very good job of organization of her stuff that she wanted to keep around. But yeah, man, it's a lot of work for your kids.
It really is. And, there's painful stuff looking at those memories because you wish you were still 30 with your 4-year-old and your 6-year-old running around. And you're now 72 and they don't come home as often. And this is a recent story. The bedroom's still decorated with the little horsey borders around the top, And now they're away in San Francisco with their own families. So get your own place that you're happy with. That interest rate here and there should not make that difference. Oh, my gosh. And it's a very hard... I sound harsh saying that, but I've known people sit in these big dusty houses for 20 years thinking the kids might come back for the holidays. Get on with your lives. This is your time now. Get something that's easier to maintain and you can go and visit the kids. Or move... I'm helping, one couple right now who moved to Florida to be with their kid. The kid moved back to a place in the north. They're selling the home here now because one kid moved south, one kid moved north. They're going back north and selling the home. I'm helping them through all of that. So, my advice is live your lives. Do what you need to do for you. Everybody else will take care of themselves, and you can take care of them better when your cup is full and not half empty. I feel like I'm on a soapbox here. What do you think, Patrick?
No, I agree with you 100%. And please give Rowena a telephone call and list your home with All-Star Powerhouse here at mountainhomehunt.com and get us some product on the market. I'm finding that homes are still increasing in value a little bit, and days on market has gone a little bit higher, but that's because it's product out there that probably has a high HOA.
Yeah.
And they don't have any money in it.
But this is a beautiful window right now because we don't have a big drop in price. We've had, you can't just say home prices have dropped because in some places they have, in some places they haven't geographically. But real estate is block to block. If you've got a great home that's well prepared, that's still going to sell in a reasonable time. If your home needs a lot of preparation, and guys, by that, I do not mean finishing off the basement. Do not take 6 months to finish off your basement in this market. It is not worth it. If you've got something that needs a little bit of finishing where buyers can see that they can come in and add some equity, that is a great thing. Sell it now before the rush in the spring. And we are going to see more inventory because a lot more people list in the spring. That gives you competition. We sell houses.
And always consider our CPO.
Yes.
Certified pre-owned home.
Yeah, it's, my gosh.
This right here will give you everything you need to upgrade your home.
Exactly.
Have the inspector come out. He'll show you where the things need to be, buttoned up.
Yeah.
Cover up that chimney.
Or we could not button them up, Patrick. So how would you feel taking your buyers into a place where I go, hey, Patrick, that one's got an inspection. Let me share it with you. And we get your buyers to look at that, notated, they're fixing this, to heck with that. The window was misty upstairs when we bought the house 7 years ago, 20 years ago, whatever. Or the misty window's not really hurting you, so to heck with that, I'm not fixing it. I will fix the nail ping in the, whatever it is. There's 40 items on the average inspection report. How do your buyers feel having that notated inspection report? Everybody goes in eyes wide open.
It's just the threat of having an inspection report, and I say threat lovingly. It just automatically, you just automatically know this home's going to be okay.
Yes. Well, by okay, you mean it's not going to be one of the third that fall out. I just wish everybody would list that this way. We run cpoexperts.com. Go take a look, cpoexperts.com. That is 300 zip codes now we have covered around the country, and I know plenty of other agents who do it somewhere. Wherever you're thinking about listing, I can find you that person who knows how to get the appraisal and inspection up front. It costs you a little bit of money. I'm telling you, I can show you how it saves you tens of thousands, not to mention that contract dropping up, and then you have a stigmatized listing. Everybody calls us and says, what's wrong with it? Oh, my gosh.
Right.
Just like everybody calls.
Yeah, with the CPO, you go from a 30% loss rate to a 7%.
Exactly right.
7% chance of falling out when your home is buttoned up. Hey, I've seen them. They come and they get their inspection report, and me as a realtor, I look at it. It doesn't even look like, oh, this is nothing. But
And
it
you can
scares the
explain
buyer.
it to them. So instead
Yeah,
of
you
some
try to explain it, but sometimes you can't talk them off of,
Of course. So, but it's notated already, and the sellers have already had it. The problem is, so the normal process, and Patrick, I always forget, we've been in this business so long, people don't understand this. The home goes under contract, and then Patrick's brought in the buyer. He brings the inspector out. Now, sometimes the inspector's busy, which is what happens in the spring, by the way. It could take 10 days, 2 weeks. The inspection comes out. The sellers don't sleep. The buyers don't sleep. Patrick then, the inspection is sent directly to the buyers. They meanwhile, have, an EpiFit thinking about, what is on there, because there's 40 items on and they haven't looked at an inspection report in 20 years, if ever. And Patrick's not there with them. When it's done up front, Patrick can share it with them and say, listen, I see this every day. There's often 40 plus items on an inspection report. This is how we've already looked through it. This is how it's been notated by the seller. So you're going in eyes wide open. Patrick's buyer now trusts the seller much more because things have been put out in the open, right? So that's why it's much more likely to go through.
Yeah, a lot of times with homes, the shiny pictures make them look so beautiful, but under the bones, there's things that are amiss. And finding those out before you put the home on the market, oh, goodness, we've seen it personally. We've had
all the time.
You've done it. The folks that don't get the inspection, unfortunately, we've seen a couple of those drop.
Oh gosh, and one was a cash deal that cost, and this is just last year, cash deal that cost them $100,000. They ended up closing $100,000 less. The other one, it dropped out 3 times, which is so stressful for everybody. And then buyers lose money. I just don't understand it, Patrick. We do this with $20,000 cars, certified pre-owned cars. Every dealership has it. The dealership gets 3% more for the car. They have a 156-point inspection. Who doesn't want to buy a car that way? Who wants to buy a car off Craigslist or instead of at the dealership? I'm not saying there's anything wrong. A lot of people are ethical. Maybe they've had whatever. But who doesn't want to buy a CPO car? That's $20,000. How are we selling $1 million home, a $2 million home, a $200,000 home without that inspection? It makes no sense to me. You've known this since you've known me. It makes no sense to me at all. I don't understand why there's not a walking tour video. I don't understand why Patrick has to go out to 12 homes and make videos for his buyer client. How does that listing agent not have a full listing video, a walking tour video, to save everybody time, energy, money, to save the sellers having people traipsing around the home? I had one yesterday, said, I don't like the fishbowl effect. I still don't know what that means on one of the listings. Fishbowl effect in the living room. I don't know what he means, but the video would have alleviated that had they seen the video first. The tenants wouldn't have been bothered. It just makes so much sense to me. So, Patrick, my love, thank you so much for calling in and giving.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm off to Maggie Valley.
Yay! Go show in Maggie Valley. Have fun.
Okay, bye-bye.
All right, bye. Beautiful Maggie Valley. We have a lot of homes for sale out there. And, of course, that's close to Canton and Clyde and the paper mills closing. Have you been hearing about that?
We have. We just had a meeting with the community the other day, and that was one of the big points of it, that what's the impact going to be?
Oh, interesting. You probably can't talk about where the community is, but obviously it's somewhere close to it. What were the pointers that the homeowners or the board were bringing up on that one?
Well, rightly so. I mean, there's an expectation that's going to have a pretty dramatic economic impact, which in turn always means that's probably going to push dues out. And that's one of the biggest challenges of the Homeowners Association.
Oh.
And one of their primary functions is to collect the dues to maintain the community.
Yes.
Well, getting ahead of that or trying to be, and that way they can be prepared to work with those particular owners. So that's what they need to do, try to find some kind of common ground where they can still meet the association's needs, but also be considerate of the status change that's just been dropped in everybody's lap.
I want to throw something in that rent cap. Is there a rent cap in there?
That conversation hasn't happened yet,
Okay.
but it's coming.
I'd have it now.
Yep. It's
as quickly as possible, because
Yep.
this is happening in June. And so let me come back. So people tune in every 5 minutes on the radio. We're talking about HOAs, homeowner associations today, dues in developments, good, bad, and the ugly. You know, about half the people who are coming in on our website at Mountain Home Hunt saying that they don't want HOAs because they've had bad experiences in the past, because they haven't been run very well. That's really what it comes down to. And then others are in areas like, so we had a paper mill in Canton that is closing down, and the workforce is about 1,200 people, they're saying, that won't be there. So we're talking about rent caps, and I've seen this happen before in the last economic cycle. Obviously, economic cycle for a small town like that, it's actually a beautiful little town. It's full of historic property, because the people with big money in the main have not moved in there, ripped down houses, taken out all the features. Charlie's laughing here. He knows exactly what I'm talking about. You know, in transitional areas, I saw this in DC when I moved to DC. People move into historic districts before they're protected. And, I mean, all of downtown Canton should be protected, right? Because it's just beautiful little homes in there. So here's the important thing about a rent cap. Most homeowners association have a rent cap. That means you can only rent 15% of the homes. Many condo buildings have no rentals, like you cannot rent them out. Now, we know people go through the back door and do it, but there's all kinds of fines in that. Here's the problem. In a small town like that, where you have so much of the income being taken away, and many of the people, do you know how many people work in the paper plant in that? Do they have any thoughts on that? Like,
I know there's a large percentage that's in Buncombe, but then there's also some outside of Buncombe, but I think the epicenter is there, so it's going to have a dramatic effect in the surrounding area regardless.
Yeah, so let's say 25% of the people in that development, we're not saying whether it's a condo or a homeowners association, half the people in that development, or even a quarter of them, work for the paper plant. That's a big number of people that may not be able to pay their mortgage anymore. So your job as a board is to protect current values and future values. We can't help it at an economic cycle, a certain amount, and very sadly, and I work with people to help them on this too, go into a short sale situation. Many banks will work with you, and just give me a call if you're concerned about this. Right now, 828-333-4483. If you don't like talking to somebody, you can go to mountainhomehunt.com. That's our website for All Star Powerhouse, brokered by XP. mountainhomehunt.com. Click on contact and say, please give me a private call about concern over my mortgage. I'll be more than happy to talk to you or point you at the correct person. A short sale is when you're still able to sell your home. You're not going to make any money because what it's worth is under what you paid. So in other words, if you just bought it, right? So by the time you pay fees or anything else, but you could get out and not damage your credit too much. It's not like a foreclosure. And there are ways out of that way. You can go on payment plans. Do not stick your head in the sand. Gosh, I feel like I'm doing a show from 2007. Please do not stick your head in the sand. There are many people in the country, in the world, in this situation, and way worse than yours, I promise. There's no need to be embarrassed. Most of us have been there where we've missed a mortgage payment. For those of you who are going, I've never missed mine, good for you. But there's lots of people who've been, in circumstances where maybe they got sick or something else, lost a job. It doesn't matter. Go talk to your bank now. Just do it. It's not, they're not going to go, oh, well, you can't pay your mortgage, hey? I promise you it's not going to happen.
And talk to your management and talk to your board, too, because they want to see you be successful. There's this idea that they're just out there to run you out. No, most of them are very reasonable. You come to them, work out some kind of solution. They want you in your home. They want everybody to enjoy it. They want to keep the community together. Come talk to them. Come talk to us. We'll work with you. We'll figure something out together.
Yeah, we've all got expertise in this because we've seen it happen so many times. That's why I'm saying the rent cap should be changed now. And I implore anybody who's listening, because we have a lot of presidents of HOAs listening, I know, and a lot of people are in an HOA board. I implore you to talk to your board now about increasing that rent cap, because here's what will happen. I saw it before, not my first rodeo. You probably saw it before last time around too. There are people out there that will have to do a short sale. There are people out, the bank doesn't care. They just want to cover most of their mortgage, right? They don't want to go through foreclosure, all the trouble that takes. A short sale is about the bank getting most of its money and not being in a precarious situation. We know what's happening with banks right now. So, a lot of those banks will agree to the short sale. They never tend to go, and don't quote me on this, but the ones I've seen are above 80% of value. So let's say, if you bought it a bit more and now it's worth the same or a bit less, but you got to pay fees, they will probably agree to a short sale. I will help you through that. 828-333-4483. Go to our website if you don't want to talk to somebody, mountainhomehunt.com. Click on contact. It's about halfway across the black bar at the top. If you want to find out your value, go to mountainhomehunt.com. Click on selling. In there, you can get your value right away. Board owners from both sides, everybody, please don't put your head in the sand. Don't change that rent cap in 6 months. It's too late. There are people struggling out there right now, and you'd rather have 1 or 2 more homes rented out in your community and not have those homes go into foreclosure than have them go into foreclosure or short sale. Am I right?
And another thing to think about too, even if they just don't want to move it, hardships. These are real hardships.
Yes.
The board should take that into consideration. If they're unwilling to make that change, consider something to bridge the gap to get these folks through it. So look at it. If it truly does put a member in a hardship scenario, think about that when you're reviewing those, whether or not you're going to allow them to lease their unit.
Yeah, it's your neighbours, for goodness sake. I mean, we're not trying to get investors in here or do something shady. We need to take care of our neighbours. It's community first. It's family first. God first. Family business, right? Community next. So, just take care of people in these situations and work through it. I want to come back to Canton quickly, even though we don't have whole lot more time left. The paper plant is closing. It's good and bad, right? If you live there and it's all you've known all of your life, and your great-grandfather worked in the plant, your grandfather worked in your plant, your dad worked in the plant, you worked in the plant, there were grown men crying at the community meeting where we learned it was going to close. Also, a lot of people don't move to Canton because they go, oh, that's where the smelly paper plant is. And we don't know. I mean, I'm sure there have been studies been done, but there are people concerned about the long-term effects of what the emissions from the paper plant. So we could actually see home values go up. The best thing is the job market is very tight, which means most of those people in Canton can drive the 20 minutes to get another job in Waynesville, which is even less time to drive than that. Asheville is 25 minutes out? So, there are lots of jobs available. And I think that is what will happen to most of those people. The big thing is what's going to happen to the paper plant. Is it going to get torn down? Something else. Todd, thank you so much for being on today. Charlie, thank you so much for being on today. And where can people get hold of you if they need their HOA managing for their community? Or
Well, we'd love them to come to our website at www.rpmgrs.com or give me a call at 828-699-7011.
And that's great. Thank you. And thank you for being the one that works through all of those issues. I've worked with Charlie before. He's been great and ran out and given me key fobs that aren't working properly, so or replace them, should I say. So thank you so much, guys. Hope you enjoyed it today. We're on every Saturday at 10 a.m. This is our 60-something show, 11 years in the making. See you on the radio next week.
This has been the Plain English Real Estate Show with Rowena Patton. Visit Rowena and post your questions at radioasheville.com or call her at 828-210-1648.